Formally welcome. We've got everything now set up properly as far as the electronics or the technology is concerned, and hopefully we're set up properly as far as intellectually and welcome. We've got everything now set up.
Little leg.
All right, back to resetting some of the technology. All right, let's try that again. Is the sound coming through okay and without a lag? Okay, because we had quite the lag there for a second. So hopefully we've got everything set up and we're ready to go now without technical difficulties. And we'll then launch with talking to God, and then we will get to the questions. Thanks, Father, for this particular time that we have together, just to share with each other stuff that we've been thinking about, questions that arise, things that people may have said that would be good to get some clarification for so we can share more effectively with them. And Lord, we're also grateful that we're here on the verge of, well, actually in the middle of, as well as on the verge of the holiday season with Hanukkah coming up tomorrow night and being part of the Christmas or Advent season already. We're grateful that this is a season of miracles, and we're grateful that you've left behind for us the record of the miracles, not just at this season, but down through history, which we remind ourselves of as we regularly interact with the biblical texts, the recording of what you've done for us. And for this, we're grateful. We pray for clarity, and we pray for a very productive time together this evening. And we pray also for those who could not be here with us tonight, and would ask for quick and rapid healing for them, and that they will be among us again real quickly. Thank you. In Yeshua's name, amen. Okay. Hello, everybody. And we've got a bunch of questions.
Oi.
Some of which date all the way back as I'm looking at this first sheet.
No, don't tell me. Or the summer.
Okay. Yes, they date. We've got quite a few that date back over the summer, and then we've got some that came in more recently. But what we want to do is to do this the way we normally do, and that is give precedence to those who are actually here in real time, and any questions that you might have. And otherwise, we'll move on to the questions that have been sent in to us by way of email. So, ladies, you're good? You're good. Okay.
So far.
In that case, and as I'm looking at it on the monitor, it's ladies there as well. So it's me and the ladies. So, ladies who've joined us, any questions from you? I know at least one of you has sent in questions.
Yeah, we got those.
We got those. So the other two of you, no questions?
Not yet.
Right. Not yet.
Simply Shavua Tov, and it's good to see you again, and wishing everyone a happy Hanukkah.
And back at you.
Yep.
All right. In that case, I think, with your permission, I'm going to read the bulk of this so it provides a background, and because it's a broad question and this helps give.
Well, it's about 15 questions, but it's
Yeah.
okay.
And
I'm going to put on chapstick while you do that.
okay. And I like the way the questioner starts out and appropriately. So I tried to think of a delicate way to ask this question, but I'm not sure how to. So I decided to leave the being delicate part up to you and how you word the question for viewers, or if you think it's wiser to answer in a less public setting. All right. As you're going to see in just a minute, the bulk of this question has to do with Messianic congregations and life in the Messianic community. So here we go. In the various Messianic congregations and groups I've been exposed to in the United States, in Europe, and Israel, I run across a lot of, and this is in quotes, eccentric people. And this seems to be a very common thing. Messianic Judaism seems to attract to it people with, dare I say it blatantly, crazy ideas and beliefs. By the way, quick aside for me, the reason I am including this in my reading of the question is that, with all due respect to the questioner, we have run into these kind of people as well.
For the whole time Messianic Judaism has been around, which is now, if we count 75 as the beginning year in general.
Yeah,
How many? I can't subtract today.
it's 50 years.
It's 50. If for the past 50 years, this has been true.
Yeah. All right. Some might want to push that back to about either 67 or 70.
Oh, it came out of a group like that too.
Yeah. Okay. The most common being the conspiracy theory fanatics. People who are sure the earth is flat and are sure the government is intentionally killing off the population of taxpayers. And if that weren't bad enough,
I haven't heard that last one before.
and they have made it their life work to convince others that they are right about these things. And yes, we have drawn our share in the larger Messianic movement of that.
Yeah, the larger movement, yes.
Yeah. We have been fortunate, not so much so here, to have had those. And the most extreme I've encountered are among the messianics who pilgrimage to Israel regularly. I once encountered two guys in Jerusalem who claimed to be Eliyahu and Moshe, and that they were the two witnesses spoken of in Revelation. My question is, why does Messianic Judaism attract so many weirdos? What is it about Messianic Judaism that makes these people believe that this is where they need to be? And then my secondary question, but we'll get to the secondary question, but let's start with the primary question. His experience in Jerusalem is one that we have shared in Jerusalem. Not that we were the Eliyahu and Moshe that he's talking about, but we have encountered people who are dressed to suit that imagery, and have been, as they understand themselves, very prophetic in their shoutings and their proclamations and all the rest. So in this case, what we're dealing with is not necessarily related just to the Messianic movement, and in many cases, I'm not even sure it was related to the Messianic movement.
No, it isn't usually.
They even have a
Clinical term.
I was going to say label, but a clinical term.
It's a clinical term.
It's
in psychology.
Yes, it is a clinical term in psychology for the people who do that, or who are somehow prompted to do that, or triggered to do that. And that name is?
Jerusalem syndrome. They have the Jerusalem syndrome. It's known, it's pretty common in Israel. They know, they have a name for it. They know what it is. It happens often.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have a name for it. These are people who really feel, for whatever reason, there can be several different kinds of reasons, that God has sent them to do a special work, and it can only be done in Jerusalem. They usually don't show up in Tel Aviv.
No.
It's always around the walls.
Yes.
It's when we were there in 85, there was this guy who called himself David and carried a guitar and walked around. And David, I think, used to say he was a Christian Jew.
Did he? I don't remember.
Well, it's just that was back before all Israelis who believed in Yeshua called themselves Messianic Jews, even though they go to churches. That's about all I want to say on that.
Okay.
I mean,
yeah, and I can remember other guys walking around in full dress costume with harps, and that they would call themselves by various biblical characters' names, and the guide would sort of chuckle and mention that this is not an uncommon occurrence. So yeah,
I don't think in general they're not harmful.
No,
but they are not. There's several different sort of mean things I could say, but they need help. if they would accept help, they need help.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a program for how to help these people not be disruptive
Yeah.
and go up to every single person who comes there, which is what they tend to do.
Yeah. They try to be in the most public places possible and
Walk in crowds and,
yeah.
but once again, that's in Jerusalem, that's a normal thing.
So now that we've dealt with the Moses and Elijah, how about the movement in general? When you are part of a movement that comes across as quite unique, you tend to attract all kinds of people, those who are curious just for curiosity's sake, but those who are also drawn to what they imagine is special or out of the ordinary. And I'm not sure how I want to describe it in terms that would make more sense psychologically, but people are drawn to that which is different than they are accustomed to. And most people have grown up not knowing that there are such things as Messianic Jews. So when they encounter this particular movement that they think is both Jewish and Christian, and most of these people have not had enough background biblically or historically to understand that to understand the Jewish framework and foundations of what became known as Christianity. Therefore, to them, this is unusual. This is going to be this will attract them if they're looking for things that are different.
Especially if they're looking for things to not be taught. In other words, they've gone to average, ordinary churches and they've heard things that they totally disagree with, and therefore they're going to different places to see if they can find a place where they will escape having to hear these wrong things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that popped something else into my mind, and I'm going to try to describe it sensibly. Related to those kind of people, there are those who don't like what they've heard. And so they show up in a new place hoping that they will find stuff that they will like to hear. Some are also coming because they think that they have figured out something, and they have decided that the Messianic Jewish congregation is the place where whatever it is that they figured out for themselves, and I'm being very general here, is going to be taught. Because if they came to this conclusion, then obviously people who are Messianic Jews, who are connected to Yeshua and who are Jews, then they must have come up with the same grand idea as well. And unfortunately, as our questioner has pointed out, and as we have encountered, the reason these people don't fit in other congregations is because they don't fit in any other congregation. And very quickly, if we don't match up with their expectations, they are on their way out the door. There are others in a somewhat similar fashion who have come to Messianic congregations because they don't agree with what they've heard in the church, and they want to hear because they figure, since we're Jews, that as Jews we will speak out against these things that they find in the churches that they consider pseudo-Christianity, I guess is the best way to put it.
You'd have to ask them.
Yeah, we'd have to ask them. But again, if we don't happen to speak out against those things, then on they go. Now, this is going to be a far more neutral and perhaps somewhat volatile is not the best term, but I can't think of a better term at this point. As we were talking, I remembered something that actually took place in this room. It was after one of our services, and it was a new couple, and they loved the service and all the rest. We started talking, and it happened to be just about this time of year. And so they took off on a diatribe on the pagan origins of Christmas. And they
They were
figured,
yelling.
that since we were a Jewish congregation, we would be against Christmas as well. Well, those of you who know me well or know us well know that we are avid celebrators of Christmas. And we find,
With caveats.
yes, understood historically and Jewishly. And we do not find that Christmas is a pagan holiday, nor that the customs associated with it are pagan if you research them historically. And I started sharing some of these things as gently and as quietly as I could. And this couple just kept on going and going and going and going. And they were telling us as a Jewish congregation how we should be observing and what we should be observing. And to me, I thought this, and I didn't say it. I thought to myself, here you come to us as non-Jews, telling us how we as Jews ought to worship as Jews. And we're trying to tell you that's not how we see things, and yet you're still trying to do this. Well, as you might suspect, we did not see these people again. Yeah. And that's not the only couple. There's been,
No, but I remember that couple.
yeah.
Could we call that Christmas syndrome?
Yes, I think we can at one level call it Christmas syndrome. And the reason for that is there are widespread notions in Christianity, and a lot of it is seeped into Judaism and Messianic Judaism as well, that misunderstand Christmas as a pagan holiday filled with pagan customs, and that it becomes a big thing for them.
Yeah, it takes over. And in the same realm, you have those that have objections about Easter.
Yep. Oh, yeah, right.
I mean, everything is taken too far. And they claim that if you talk about the Easter bunny, your children will be confused and they'll worship the Easter bunny. So they don't call him the Easter bunny like the rest of America. They call him the spring bunny, like that will make a difference for their children's beliefs in Yeshua and the resurrection. And I'm just going, oh my Lord, you're not going to be able to control everything your children hear and see. I'm sorry, you're going to have to let that go. Can you explain what the Easter bunny is in a helpful way? Yeah, you sure can. And because people have been doing it now for thousands of years. And just like, how can we explain about Santa? Won't they be upset? Won't our kids be upset if they grow up and then they think that God is Santa? And you're going to have to explain it to them, and you're going to have to explain it not once, not twice, but like every day in the way you consider and the way you talk about and worship, not in, don't say this word. That's not going to work in America nowadays, because the minute you say, don't say that word, and I am talking about profanity too, you can say these words exist and we don't use them at our house, because if you have a precious little darling, the minute they get on the school bus, they will learn every single one of those words. And even if you homeschool them, they'll still hear those words. My cousins taught me a couple I didn't even know. I was about 8. We didn't use them at my house, but I guess they used them at their house. I don't even want to talk about it. Go ahead.
Okay. In a related fashion, I think partly for the reasons we've already expressed, Messianic congregations tend to be a place, and we've experienced this as well, where people come and they feel, because we are unique, and because they feel somehow they've got some unique truth that they've come to understand, that they can come here to teach us. On numerous occasions, we've had people who said to me, well, I feel like God has called me to share prophetic words. So let me share some with you. In other words, they come here to act as prophets to this Messianic synagogue. So in that sense, they might as well be on the streets of Jerusalem with the Jerusalem syndrome people, but they come here are feeling like this is a place that they're called to preach to and to teach to. So that too is part of the package that we have to deal with from time to time. Fortunately, we haven't had to deal with that for a while.
Oh.
And we have one of our members who has a gift at this. When he picks up on it, and he can sense this very.
He usually talks to you during oneg, during refreshment time.
Yeah, he's a very social and sociable person, but he's also very astute. He has his own very gentle way of suggesting to these people that there are other congregations nearby, and they would appreciate far more than ours. And I have seen him on a couple occasions not only say this, but open the door for the people and show them out the door.
Well, we live in the Bible Belt too. And
Yes.
so within like 3 square miles of our building, there must be 35 churches where you can hear the gospel, and it's very well, everybody's great and they're very pleasant and the theology is basically okay. And so why don't you go to one of those? Because we have a special thing here that we're trying to do, and it's not like the rest of the 35, as far as we know.
So anyhow, that's just sort of a broad response to the first question as to why does Messianic Judaism attract so many weirdos?
Also, I would say,
Yes,
that's a loaded statement.
Yeah.
How many churches has this person been to? I mean, seriously, churches of various stripes, Protestant churches, Catholic churches, Orthodox churches, churches with no denomination, because they also attract
Yeah.
their own too. And so I think that needs to be kept in mind.
Yeah. Although we do attract our own brand of weirdos.
And we did for the first 10 years of
Yes.
our existence. We had them too.
Mhm.
But then we learned things. So anyway, go ahead and we'll talk about
All
that.
right. Then my secondary question is, why does Messianic Judaism most often shy away from practices of mainstream Judaism? What I mean by this is that why is it so rare to find any Messianic believers who actually, he says tie tefillin, I would say lay tefillin, or refrain from going to shopping, or refrain from going shopping at the mall on Shabbat, or that can even read and understand Hebrew. I once visited a Messianic congregation in Israel for their Shabbat morning service. That year, Yom Kippur happened to be on a Shabbat. And because there was an intifada that year, they said, this year we're going to do something different on Yom Kippur than we usually do. This year we're going to fast and pray on Yom Kippur. Why are Israeli Messianic congregations not already praying and fasting on Yom Kippur? Why does it take an intifada for them to start acting like Jews? Why does Messianic Judaism have such a disconnect from traditional Judaism to the point that a whole bunch of Torah commandments are still being disregarded, just like they are in the Christian churches? Okay. And then he does say at the end, and I need to read this just so you get an appropriate feel for the questioner. When I first encountered these things, I tended to be judgmental and frustrated. And sometimes judgment and frustration still come up as my reaction. And I get to check myself that I'm not judging others and that I treat them with love and patience. So I want to ask these questions with genuine curiosity and love, not with judgment and frustration. I want to know exactly what it is about Messianic Judaism that is attracting people who are already like this, or is grooming and turning people to have crazy ideas and follow through with them. I'm going to suggest I'm going to suggest that the crazy ideas are not in most cases are not part of the package of most Messianic congregations. If by crazy ideas we're talking about the kind of stuff that is akin to the Jerusalem syndrome stuff or some of the other things he mentioned earlier on. And hopefully we've addressed why we end up attracting people something like this. But the more serious question to answer is, the disconnect with traditional Judaism that this particular person has experienced. His experience in Israel actually mirrored an experience we had in one of our first trips to Jerusalem.
You mean the shock of going to all these places and going, what?
Yes. We and it was when we spent the better part of the summer there, that one.
Right.
Yeah.
When our kids were 8 and 4.
Yep.
So
All right,
a little while ago.
So we went to the it's Shabbat, so we went to
Well, we were staying by ourselves. We were on a tour.
Oh, right. Thank
We
you.
were living in an apartment
In Jerusalem.
there in Jerusalem. Mhm. Our first time in Israel.
And so we wandered over to the place that we had heard was the oldest, and it was called the Messianic congregation in Israel, and it happened to be in Jerusalem. And we wandered in, and we had been in the Messianic movement for something like 10 years by that time. And as we were going through the service, we kept looking for stuff that we did at our home Messianic congregation, stuff that we do here, because this was at that time our home Messianic congregation already.
Mhm.
And did we even hear the Shema? I don't think we even.
Oh, no. Because I asked him afterwards, I said, why don't you do the Shema? He said, too Jewish.
Okay, this is in Jerusalem, the oldest so-called Messianic synagogue in Jerusalem. We did not hear the Shema, but here's what we did hear. We heard onward Christian soldiers in Hebrew.
You can't make this stuff up, really.
We did not go back again the next Shabbat. Not that these people weren't very friendly people.
They're very lovely, nice people.
But they had come to an understanding that when they became followers of Yeshua, their Jewishness was no longer relevant. I'll just leave it at that. And by the way, we did talk to one of the couples there because we had lunch with them.
One of the leaders.
With the leaders.
Mhm.
Because we had known them in the United States.
Mhm.
That experience is, as the questioner implies, not unusual in Israel. In our various trips to Israel, and I'm guessing we've been there a dozen times, by and large, with few exceptions, congregations, whether they are Messianic congregations or not, whether they call themselves Messianic congregations or not, are not very Jewish in their worship or in their practice. Now, in all fairness, Israel is not but again, by and large, the majority of people are not traditionally oriented.
They're you don't have a big choice of various realms of Judaism to go into when you're in Israel. It's either you're dati, or you are
Very observant.
very observant, or you're not observant at all, except for the cultural values that
Yeah.
exist in Israel, like their day off is Saturday,
Yeah.
and so Saturday nothing. So there are certain cultural values that Israel as a whole shares, but it's not due to because you love God, you're therefore going to do this or this and not do this and this.
All right. Shortly after our experience with this oldest of the Messianic Jewish congregations in Israel, in Jerusalem, we went to a Baptist church.
Went to Narcus Street Baptist Church.
I don't know if it's still there. I think it's still around.
I would still tell people it was great.
Yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
They worshiped on Saturday.
They worshiped on Saturday. They did the Shema.
They did the Shema. They stood up and did the Shema.
And this Baptist church did some Jewish things. Now, we didn't expect them to be a Messianic synagogue like we are, but it was more Jewish in its presentation and in its worship than was the oldest Messianic congregation in Israel. So that's the nature of things in Israel. Some of that has changed some. I don't know that there are still more than a small handful of traditionally oriented Messianic congregations in Israel to this day.
Well, we couldn't name any, but that doesn't mean there aren't any. We're not terribly experts on situation in Israel.
Yeah.
We know some things, but I don't.
Yeah,
know
I think we know all of three. But that doesn't mean that they're not more than three.
And I just want to say this too. So in the past, I'd say 15 years or so, what's happened in Israel, or when we talk to people who were Israelis, if you believe in Yeshua, you are likely to say you're a Messianic Jew. But if you go to the place where they are worshiping, you would call it a church. What they do is church. They meet on Sunday, they sing hymns, but they still outside their own group, they call themselves Messianic Jews. And this is going to be true about every single one of these questions. You can label yourself whatever you want, but you can't take people's word that by Messianic Jew that they mean what you mean as a Messianic Jew. In Israel, I think they do it because they realized the word Christian was not getting anything across to any Israeli, or they were treated as like, oh, okay, you're a little meshuggah, a little cuckoo. So I would urge everybody, oh, hi, I'm a Messianic Jew. Ask them, oh, that's great. What do you do? Because what they're calling themselves and what you understand to be a definition of what we do could be miles apart. And we need to just take the first shaking hand, hi, who are you and what do you do? If they see Messianic, great. Who do you know? Where do you go to congregation? You sort of have to do that, and you can't just accept their initial response to you, because Jews for Jesus, they will say they're Messianic Jews. They are not. If you really pin them down, they will say, yeah, I go to a church. No, if I lead a Jewish person to the Lord, I am not going to send them to a Messianic congregation. We're going to send them to a church. So that would be just an example of one way to sort of tell where they're coming from.
Now,
is that fair enough? Am I being too strong?
I'm wondering if there's more flexibility nowadays than there was 10 years ago.
Well, I will also say there are Messianic Jews that are with us in the union, although the union, which is a group of Messianic congregations. Oh, you're going to get there? I was just going to say, you could go in the union and you're going to find a much more Orthodox friendly group than you are if you go to other mega groups of Messianic congregations. They're going to be a little more wacky than the one we belong to is. And that's a difference too that you need to realize in America, not just in Israel.
And that's a bridge to the second part of my answer to his second question. And that is an introduction to Messianic Judaism here in the United States, let's say in North America. And actually, as I'm thinking about it, since we were in Brazil a year ago, I think we can actually say in the Americas.
In the Americas.
And to some degree also in Europe and the places where we've interacted, particularly in Germany, and in the former Soviet Union.
Poland.
Oh, and I'd forgotten about Poland and Poland
Ukraine.
As well.
We've been there and gone to Messianic congregations.
Yeah, we've done Ukraine, we've done Russia. Anyhow, so the American European version of Messianic Judaism, or versions of Messianic Judaism. Back in 1979, we were involved in the formation of the Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations. And our synagogue is part of that. And as Patrice has already suggested, by and large, you will find in the Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations a commitment to things that are more traditionally oriented, both in liturgy and in practice. Because the union has always set itself up to be a broad umbrella, you will find a good deal of variation even within the union. But within the union, there is a positive attitude towards things that are called either traditional or rabbinic or I guess those are two best terms that I can think of. And you will find some very, very traditional Messianic synagogues within the Union. You will find that are less traditional, but they are not anti-traditional.
No, I don't think anyone in Union is anti-traditional or even anti-rabbi that much.
No, in fact, theoretically, because if you review the documents, the documents of the UMJC, you can't be a member of the UMJC as a congregation if you are anti-rabbinic or anti-traditional. That is not the case in other organizations or associations of Messianic congregations and individuals.
You want to name a few so they can identify them?
Well, I will only name the one.
Well, we can name other ones that are
Yeah.
not the Union.
Yeah. The largest one in the last handful of years, it may be even in the last 2 or 3 years, put together, I don't know if I want to call it a position paper or if it's more of a book or booklet.
It's a pamphlet.
Is that in which they come out as strongly anti-rabbinic.
In other words, the rabbis hate Messianic Jews and the rabbis are out to get us. And the rabbis do not accept all this, but this group called the rabbis. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter who they are or when they were.
And rather, even more forcefully than that, their position is that it is for followers of Yeshua, we should not be following the teachings of the rabbis. And they're not talking about the rabbis of today, they're talking about the rabbis of history.
The Talmud and
The rabbinic
literature.
rabbinic literature. And so given that kind of an attitude, you will find that they tend to be less, if not totally non-observant of the Jewish traditions. Yes, their services are still on Shabbat. Yes, they do teach Hebrew.
Sort of.
Well, some more than others, but
Then you've heard things other than what
Yeah.
I've heard.
But certainly not with the same kind of commitment or the same.
Well, the Union doesn't do
Comment.
very well at that either.
But at least, with the Ashrenu school, they're teaching that as
For the kids.
for the kids.
I
Yeah.
don't think the adults have woken up yet, but that's okay.
Anyhow, so you've got a traditional orientation, but you have not just a non-traditional orientation within Messianic Judaism, you have an anti-traditional orientation within Messianic Judaism. The Union and this other organization are the two largest ones, and in fact, the other organization
In the Western Hemisphere.
in the Western Hemisphere, the other organization, in fact, is older, has been around longer than the Union. Within the Union, you have a group called the Messianic Jewish Rabbinic Council that is even more traditionally oriented and committed. In Europe, you have congregations who are associated with this other organization. It's called the Messianic Jewish Alliance, or the International Messianic Jewish Alliance of America, or its international version, the International Messianic Jewish Alliance. You will find people who are connected with that in Europe, as you will find people connected with the Union in Europe. And then you will find people who are not connected at all. What we have found by and large in the congregations we ended up teaching at is we've ended up teaching at traditionally oriented congregations. So there's a whole bunch of them in Europe. Let me think, is there much more that we need or should say about that? Or
Well, there's smaller groups.
Oh, yes, there are
in America where
Yes.
they're like groups that have 8 or 10 congregations associated with them. And there's several of those.
Yeah.
So you might happen on a person who goes to one of those congregations and they have their own way of dealing with everything. But I think it's safe to say that the ones that we know about in those smaller congregational groups, they really are more church oriented. They wouldn't say what they're church oriented. I'm saying they're church. They are more doing what people do in churches rather than more Jewish.
And they're not necessarily anti-traditional, but
No,
they're definitely non-traditional.
Yeah.
So That's a very quick and frankly speaking, shallow description.
Mhm.
It's by no means in depth of Messianic Judaism in the Americas, in Europe, and we did Israel as well. And to bring it back full circle to the questioner, so that means you are going to find many Messianic congregations that are not very traditional. As far as some of the practices, some of those practices that were mentioned by the questioner are individual practices and are not necessarily congregational practices. And so the individuals would have to answer. The congregations would have their own particular approach to some of these things, and the various congregations would then answer with respect to how they view the traditions. If you want to get a feel for the overall approach that we find ourselves part of, if you go to the Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations website, I think it's .org, umjc.org.
I think so.
You will find core values, mission statement, a statement called Defining Messianic Judaism, and then what we believe. And if you read through those, you'll get a real good feel for where those congregations that are part of the Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations are coming from. And that largely would describe us as well, although we tend to be among the more traditional.
I mean, our congregation here.
Yeah.
Are we more traditional?
Than most in the Union.
In what? Give me an example of.
In how liturgical we are.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. I got you. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, when I'm talking about tradition, I'm not just talking about individual practice. I'm also talking about the
way this worship
the way the
services
worship
are.
goes on. One of the actually a couple of the things that have been of great encouragement to me over the years is for a while, and I'm not sure if this person is still alive, this gentleman from the area would come to our synagogue on a regular basis, and frequently he would bring his father along, and his father happened to be a retired cantor who was part of
a regular synagogue.
Was part of the conservative movement in Judaism, and I forget whether it was the son that said it or the father that said it, that the father loved coming because he could, he enjoyed joining us in the liturgy. So in other words, here's this conservative cantor who liked what we did because we did what he was comfortable with and he had grown up doing. And then the other guy popped out in my mind. Oh, yes. On another occasion, another person this person was from the larger Jewish community here in the Tampa Bay area. And interestingly enough, now that I think of it, he was also from the conservative movement, not Reform or Orthodox, but he wanted to check us out. I found this out as we were talking in the Oneg room after services, and he said, "Look, I'd heard about you guys, and I thought I'd come and see for myself." And he said, "I really appreciated what I heard." And it turns out this guy is a moil. And he said, I would be.
What a moil is.
Moil is the one who is involved in the ritual circumcision for
babies.
For traditional Jewish boys, babies. And he said, I would be happy to serve as a moil for anyone in your congregation, provided that they have Jewish parents. And I said, wow, thank you. Third example, we're at, and I'm thinking it's one of Eve's musical things for school.
Yeah.
And so we're there, and
like, was it middle school?
I think it was.
She was playing in a band concert.
Yeah, So here we are, and we're there at the band concert at the end of the year. And after it's all over, we get up, we say hello to those around us, and turns out the guy who was in front of us got into a conversation with us because I was wearing my kippah. And he was part of a Messianic, pardon me, part of a conservative congregation. And we talked back and forth, and he apparently liked enough of what we had to say because he said, look, if you ever need any help in your bar and bat mitzvah program, feel free to call on me. I'll be happy to teach your kids. So
He's from up in Pasco.
yeah, he has now moved to Pasco. He was at that time in Pinellas. So that gives you a feel for where we come from as a congregation, where we stand as a synagogue within the larger union of Messianic Jewish congregations, and where that stands in view of the larger so-called Messianic movement that we find in the Americas, in Europe, and Israel. I think now we've covered that fairly broadly and hopefully sufficiently. Did we raise any questions?
You guys have any questions?
Yeah.
You knew some of the story, right? Because we've shared along the way. They've been around for a while. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, here's one thing that I think is important to say. Neither John nor I would think probably 90% of people in the union, and that means I'm talking about mainly the leaders of these congregations, which are the people that we know the best. From most congregations in America, we know their leaders. There are some congregations in America, we know a bunch of people in that congregation for various reasons. We've, I'd say, figured out would be the best thing, that in order to be a good Jew, whatever that means to you, in order to be a good Jew, it is not necessary to be an Orthodox Jew. That
Good. Yeah,
you
we need
can
to
be
get
a
to that.
very, very good, upright part of the Jewish community and member in good standing and given a lot of respect and feel like you're fitting in without being Orthodox. Because we've seen in our lives how, especially at the beginning, back in the 70s, when people were still getting their minds around what we were doing and why weren't we in the church and all that kind of stuff, people were just going full blast into, before I was your average American, and now I don't do anything on Shabbat, and I eat like this, and I dress like this, and I don't hang around people who talk about this, and after a while, you get to sort out where you are. You get to put aside the rubble, and you get to put your head up and go, okay, I think this is where I'm standing on this topic, which is how Orthodox do I want to be? And although John and I lived when Messianic Judaism was coming, it was becoming a nationwide thing. We lived in a very Jewish suburb of Chicago, and like extremely Jewish suburbs of Chicago, because they had their school off on high holidays. If you walk down the street of the town on Yom Kippur, all the stores would be closed and there'd be nobody walking up and down the street. And so we tended then to be a little more worried about food laws and about what we were eating and how we were behaving. But then we realized that that does no good if you're the only one that you know doing that. It just doesn't work. Or it can work only if you are very extremely strict with yourself. And I can't even imagine how your kids would survive this experience. That you should fit in with the culture you live in. So it's very easy to do all these dati things in Jerusalem. If you live in Jerusalem, boy, it's easier, so much easier for you. You go into a restaurant, you're not going to see any pork or shellfish. You know, you can find restaurants that serve pork and shellfish if you want to. But if you don't, basically, and you're going to find a ton of dairy restaurants, you're going to find a ton of meat restaurants. It's things like that that are so, make it so easy and convenient for you to do what you feel you need to do that just don't exist here in America. You just have to be the Lone Ranger unless you are part of a community that basically is going along with the way you feel you have to observe your Jewish life. And I think it's really important to not keep trying to attain orthodoxy, because that's not the only way to be a good Jewish person, and or to be more acceptable to God, because God accepts us where we are, no matter what we say we worship.
I want to build on that, and I hadn't thought about this until you brought it up. And this is important. But first of all, if you want to know exactly where we stand as a synagogue, we've got the stuff that we've printed out that we put in the visitors packet. We've got the stuff that's on the website. But wander on through, if you've not already done so, or if you have, you might want to wander back through just by way of review. The membership classes that we have,
You
the
need to
recordings.
maybe give membership classes again.
Well, we've got them. We've got them
Oh,
recorded.
Yeah, you've got them recorded. Okay.
We got recordings of the membership classes, and that's a good way to get a more detailed understanding of where we stand as a Messianic synagogue within the broader Messianic Jewish movement. So, and I think they are readily accessible off the website. So I would recommend that. I want to say something a little more strongly than Patrice did.
Never.
Yeah. And I've said this on many occasions, both in class and out of class. And let me just mention, because not everyone knows all of our background. Among the degrees I've managed to accumulate, one of the degrees comes from a well-known mainstream Jewish institution or educational institution. I don't usually mention it in a public forum, because although I went there and I was fully accepted there as a Messianic,
And they knew that he was Messianic.
and they knew that I was Messianic, and I graduated from there. And in fact, was it the president or the chancellor, whoever, at our graduation, spoke very positively of me specifically.
He every time someone would graduate, he would give a little spiel about
Yeah.
them. It was very lovely and personal. But it made me nervous, because once he started doing that, I'm going, oh, I have no idea what he's going to say about John. And it's like, I'm pregnant and I'm too hot, and I'm sitting there and I was going, I don't know what he's going to say about my husband. Oh no, so yeah, that's just me.
And it was very positive, and he
Mhm.
pointed out that I was a Messianic Jew. Interestingly enough, they had shortly thereafter, they had finished building or rebuilding their auditorium. And as it turned out, I was the first person to conduct a Jewish wedding in that refurbished auditorium. So that's the kind of acceptance we got. But anyhow, I don't mention the name of the school, because then if it is known that this particular school graduated this crazy Messianic Jew by the name of John Fisher, then they don't get a whole lot of good publicity from some circles. So I don't mention which one it is, but I mentioned that as part of my education, because it's important to know that when I say make this next statement. Many people act like, if they don't think this, like Orthodox Judaism is the gold standard of Judaism, of classical Judaism.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me make it very blunt. Orthodox Judaism is not the gold standard of traditional Judaism. Period. They've got a lot of things right, but it's not the gold standard. I think more traditional forms of conservative Judaism come far closer to that, as I understand the history and the development of Judaism. I will give you one thing by way of example, and maybe that will illustrate then the strength of my statement, why I said it so strongly. One of the core texts within traditional Judaism has always been the Talmud. After Torah and Tanakh, in traditional Judaism, Talmud is the most important. In the discussions you find in the Talmud, you find, and I can't cite the exact reference, I probably ought to find it and jot it down, stick it in my phone. We are told that today, let me back up. When you read the discussions in the Talmud, you'll have various rabbis speaking, various rabbis quoting other rabbis, and then you'll have what you would call a majority opinion, but you will also have mentioned the minority opinions. And the reason for the minority opinion is this, as one of the ancient rabbis said, today's minority opinion may become tomorrow's majority opinion, and today's majority opinion might find itself the minority opinion in the future. And he wasn't saying that negatively. He was saying that descriptively because that's the way Judaism works and was intended to work. Orthodox Judaism finds itself, from my perspective, too far entrenched in one way of doing things, and their way of doing things, as I said, is
It's the
not
only acceptable way of being Jewish.
or the best way of being Jewish. My response is that is not how traditional Judaism was originally presented. That's how Orthodoxy developed through the years. So I have nothing against Orthodox Judaism, but they are not the gold standard. They are too rigid in many ways, and their rigidity is not particularly helpful in accurately communicating the flexibility that's inherent within Judaism. There is a book, and I'm going to try to get the title. I can only think of half the title.
Is it the one that talks about
It's
flexodoxy?
exactly one.
I don't even know what book that is, but I've heard enough students talk about it.
But the term flexodoxy is in the title. And I think that the title and the approach that's in that book says it very, very well. So
I was just going to add, in case it's not clear to people, when you meet Chabad members, so they're everywhere in America. Now they're in many
in Europe as well, yeah.
in Europe as well. And their purpose is to spread Judaism, I think, back to Jewish people who've
Yes.
fallen away in their sight. They're even more Orthodox than the Orthodox. So it's not like, well, they won't be as bad as in a certain way, bad. Yeah, they'll be more strict. They'll be even stricter. And so
But they are often far more warm and
they're
welcoming
very nice to
and
us.
very welcoming.
Very welcoming, and our son thinks they're just swell because they like him. Yes, ma'am.
Is it the way of the boundary cross?
That's it.
An introduction to Jewish flexodoxy?
Yes, thank you for finding that. And the author's name is
Rabbi Gershon
Winkler.
Winkler. That's an easy, like Henry Winkler.
Yeah. So Winkler, The Way of the Boundary Crosser, and what is it? Second part was that?
Oh, let me go back. An introduction to Jewish.
An introduction to Jewish flexodoxy. Okay, that makes the case far better than I have or than I could. So again, nothing negative about Orthodox Judaism. I have relatives.
Yes, he does. And they bring their own paper plates to family gatherings so they can eat food with us. I mean, really.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we get along great. We're just fine.
We are not against Orthodox Judaism in any way. We're against those, particularly in the Messianic movement, who think that Orthodox Judaism is the gold standard for Judaism.
And everybody else is not really very Jewish at all.
So I would say to them, welcome to Winkler, an introduction to Jewish flexodoxy.
I just also want to say too that in my mind, one of the most telling ways to figure out how congregations are going to come across is the leadership, is anybody in the leadership theologically trained? Is anybody in the leadership, do they have bachelor's degrees? If they have bachelor's degrees, are they in political science? Are they in engineering? Are they? And these may be very smart people and very spiritually oriented. But when then the leadership allows charismatic things to take over the worship service on Shabbat, it's a problem. It's a problem. And in our experience, if your congregation rolls like that, in other words, you don't have liturgy in your service because, it quenches the spirit or whatever, or you're not familiar with it, that's when crazy people show up. Because they sense that, oh, I can say a lot of shocking and unbelievable things here, and they'll accept me because they're listening to those other shocking and unbelievable things. And they're having this kind of service where they, are slain in the spirit and roll around. Yeah, so they'll accept anything I say. Yeah, because if you have that kind of service, a Jewish person is going to feel very uncomfortable. When they show up to go to a Shabbat service, there are certain things they will not expect to see. And if they see these things, they're going to feel uncomfortable and they're probably not going to come back. And in a certain way, you can, well, and you can be very sincere and think, well, it's the work of the Holy Spirit and God is directing us to do this. And we have to be sensitive to how God is leading us and the Spirit is moving. Yes, I see the hand.
This reminds me of something, the importance of study to make sure you're doing the right thing to show yourself approved. Because you could go off on a whole bunch of tangents without, truly studying the word, studying the backgrounds, getting familiar with the original language, the culture, everything, because you can spin off on all sorts of wild adventures if you don't ground yourself.
Correct. And if you don't know enough to realize you don't know enough, then you're sort of lost from the beginning. And from what we've seen and experienced, it's those kind of congregations that have the problem with a lot of crazy showing up, as we did when we were first here. And we didn't do a whole lot of liturgy. We did maybe 3 or 4 pieces of liturgy during our services, like when we first started at the congregation here in 82. But now we have a lot of liturgy. And yet, a lot, when Jewish people show up, and they do regularly here, even though we don't have a giant Jewish population in our area of Florida, we are not on the area of Florida that has a giant Jewish population. We're on the other side of Florida. But when we do have Jewish people show up, they feel comfortable. And they feel these are normal people that I wouldn't mind hanging out with. And to me, that's half the battle right there. And whether or not they stay, at least they've seen that there are normal people who are Messianic Jews that they could be friends with.
Yeah, and let me just reemphasize what Jessica said. She stressed the importance of learning. That is central to Judaism. Not only to learn, but to continue to learn. I mentioned it in the class, which I would have set a commercial for, except that we had our last class 2 days ago in hermeneutics. I mentioned in that class that at the very heart of Judaism is the understanding that education is important. You need to learn, you need to continue to learn, because as the rabbis have frequently said, every time you approach the biblical texts, there is something new that you can learn and find. So yes, learning is important. And in fact, we were told by the rabbis that after we're done here, we get graduated to the yeshiva Shel Hashemayim, the heavenly yeshiva.
The
birth.
big yeshiva in the sky.
The big yeshiva in the sky. So the learning doesn't stop when we're done here. The learning, as is understood in Judaism, continues even after we are done here, which indirectly begins to answer another question from months ago, as to what happened, what's the afterlife like? But we'll have to remember when we get around to answering that question.
We didn't yet?
No, we didn't. And ladies, if one of the three of you will remind me to talk about the yeshiva on high when we talk about the afterlife, when we get around to it. That sidetracked me from something else I was going to say. Oh, I know what I was going to say. All this discussion about the way in which a more sane and sensible approach to Judaism. And as I'm looking at the screen, I seem to have,
I've just noticed some things in the chat. I've been on,
yeah, there's been a bit of a lag. If there is, we apologize. Anyhow,
just comments.
okay, but what I was,
But they're not about this. It's not about what we're saying, right? No, it's not about what we're talking about.
oh, okay,
It's a
so,
different comment page.
oh, a different comment page. Okay, that sidetracked me. All right, this raises the question then. How about those who are not Jews?
Oh, yeah.
I know we're toward the end of our time, but we at least need to address that, I think, given the discussion we had.
Fair enough.
Largely speaking, within Messianic Judaism, Gentiles are welcome to be part of the congregations, with one exception, and that is if you as a Gentile are not there, like we mentioned in one example that occurred to us here, if you're not coming in order to teach us how we should do things, or if you should not be coming if you're here to teach us how to do things.
I wouldn't go to any congregation
No,
and pretend I'm going to tell them what to do.
exactly. If you're coming here to tell us how we should do things, you are not welcome here. And you're probably not welcome in most Messianic congregations as well. If you're here to learn and to participate, then you are more than welcome to be part of our congregation. Now, the question that was raised went like this: how important is it that a Gentile convert to Judaism? Which is a related question. Does it matter to God which parts of Torah observance are required or necessary as a God-fearing believer? Again, lots to unpack here. Any answers in this wide realm of thoughts, many unstated here, would be good. Okay, so that's the question. Yes, if you come to learn, if you come to join us as part of the community and worship with us as a community, you are certainly welcome. Is it required to convert to Judaism to be part of our Messianic community or be part of Messianic Judaism? Do you want to start the answer to that?
Why should I start the answer to that?
Because we've got to lead into your chapter on God-fearers.
Well, no, I don't think we have to do that, but
Yeah, because it was brought up in the question.
do you have to convert to Judaism to like be a member of our congregation? No.
Does converting to Judaism draw you closer to God or make you more spiritual? The answer to that also is no.
No. I think one of the things people misunderstand is, well, don't Judaism and believing in Yeshua have two different ways to be righteous, so that you have to choose one way or the other? And my answer to that would be, it's always the same way.
Mhm.
It's the same way in the Tanakh as it is in the Newer Testament. There's not more than one way that you're approved by God. You're approved by God through grace and your faith,
Mhm.
not whether you're Jewish or Gentile.
Now, in days gone by, and it's still true today, there are various ways in which you can connect to us as a Messianic Jewish community as far as your own practice, and we might want to call it Jewish practice. In her chapter called Modern Day God-Fearers in the Enduring Paradox,
Which is a book.
which is a book published by Messianic Jewish Resources, and which I think is on our book table here. She deals with the situation historically as to how non-Jews connected with Israel and with the Jewish community in order to be part of the community. And there were various levels of practice you could be involved in. In some levels of practice, there were Gentiles who lived and practiced as Jews, but as much as, how should I put this? As fully as Jews did, but they did not convert to Judaism.
That means they went to the synagogue regularly.
And
what?
And they observed Shabbat, and they kept kosher, and all the rest. These were called in ancient days God-fearers. They were God-fearers not because they feared God. They did fear God, but they were God-fearers because they lived in a way that was God-fearing from within the biblical perspective, which was within a Jewish perspective.
They had rules.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, oh, I love God. That wasn't the way they were God-fearers.
No. So they could live as if they were Jews. They, of course, could convert to Judaism. And historically, that's what Ruth did, and others within others within our traditions will say, and I think they're correct, that Rahab did as well. But anyhow, and I mentioned them because those two ladies are very significant in Jewish history, but you weren't required to convert or to live as fully Jewishly as a God-fearer. What was required of you? Acts chapter 15. You had to follow what are called the Noahide laws. Only 4 are mentioned in Acts 15. The rabbis, as they understood the text from Genesis chapter 9, find 7. The 4 that are mentioned for 2 reasons. Number one, they didn't need to mention all 7 because the other 3 that weren't mentioned were enforced by the Roman Empire, and if you weren't following those particular rules, you wouldn't be around to follow the other 4. You'd be dead. The other 4, by the way, a generation before the decision was made in Acts 15, were those that were prescribed by the great Rabbi Hillel as the way in which Gentiles should live, and the way in which that would allow them to become connected to the Jewish community. Interestingly enough, in the book of Leviticus, I think it's chapter 17 and 18, those 4 are expanded on and applied to non-Jews as well. So I think now then we've come full circle as to Messianic Judaism, who's involved as Jews, as non-Jews, and perhaps answered the question as to why we have drawn in the past wackos and how we've been fortunate.
We've been very fortunate.
We haven't seen yet in years.
No, we haven't. I was going to say this. So there were 2 guys in their middle ages, and they came when the congregation first started meeting. They both were named Dan. So it was the 2 Dans, and the man who was one of the founders, Dr. David Bronstein, has gone to his reward, as I like to say. He used to call them the gold dust twins because they were a little loopy, to be nice. They were very nice. They liked to talk, very personable, very supportive of the congregation, but they might not be the person at the mall that you would go up to and ask for help because they were a little loopy. And then we heard they didn't come anymore. And then we heard they went to Israel, and we're going, well, hopefully that will work out for them, because frankly, Israel attracts some people like this, like Jerusalem syndrome people and other kinds of people. So hopefully it's a smaller country, and people maybe will take more of an interest in sort of assisting them to get through their lives. And when we went to Israel, I would say about 7-8 years after they left the congregation. And who did we see in downtown Jerusalem but one of the Dannies? And yeah, that was exciting. And he did not recognize us. It's just as well. But yeah, we don't know what happens to these kinds of people after they leave us. We think Danny turned out okay. At least he was living successfully in Israel. Good for him. Kol hakavod. Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I think there's more toleration for people who are outside the norm, quote unquote, in Israel than
Could
there
very well
is
be.
than there is in modern America.
Okay. I think we've done,
We've beat the dead horse.
we've beat the dead horse. Okay, any questions to this last part that we threw in there? I know there were questions earlier, but any questions on this? No? All right.
Because we're brilliant and that we solved all their questions.
Okay.
You weren't getting
Then,
that off done?
no, I'm circling it because we didn't
Okay.
do it.
We did. Oh, I see. I'm being
Yeah.
a little funny.
Yeah. And we'll find out, hopefully from the questioner himself, whether we did an adequate job in
You
answering
can go ahead and do that. I'm not going to do that.
answering his questions. Okay, in that case, we will not see you again as part of Stump the Stars until
Next year.
Yeah, it's next year. I'm trying to remember when. I think I think in January, it's the third.
I can get out my calendar.
I think it's the third Saturday in January.
Okay.
Don't get your calendar because it's not normally when we would do it. I've got a copy, a pre-copy of the newsletter that does have it marked there. So if you'll give me 30 seconds to run next door, I'll double check the
He's going to
date.
run next door. I don't know. I don't see these things until they come in the mail myself. So
The things that I've noticed in our Messianic congregation, especially with Gentiles, is a lack of understanding, first of all, of even their own supposed Christian religion, but definitely a lack of understanding of Judaism, because it attracts a whole lot of people that want to work their way to heaven. A lot of legalists. Right now, they've got people in that congregation saying, if you don't honor Shabbat and every one of the holidays, you're going to hell. And I'm like, oh,
and
God.
show me a verse. Show me
Right.
bring a Bible. Show me a verse. They can't even find 6 verses that combined would. No, it doesn't.
No.
It's not wrong. And it's in our experience, it's people who have not been very well educated in the things they need to know to have a congregation, either a Christian or a Jewish one. They weren't educated in it. And so therefore they just are running by the seat of their pants, and it doesn't work. I mean, you can have a congregation, but it will be troubled. You'll have trouble in the congregation because there's a lack of knowledge on the leadership part. It's not just us being educated, it's everybody on our, the leadership team is putting in some work of trying to do better and trying to read books and learn new things. And it's super important within Judaism. It's really one of the only things that gains you any respect in Judaism is an education, and continue to educate yourself.
Okay, took me a little while to find it because Joe had hidden it, but I found it. January 17th is when we're next due to meet.
I'm going to write that down.
Yes,
Thank you. With my high-tech.
yes. High-tech calendar. All right, and before you write it down,
Yes, dear.
would you close for us in prayer?
Then I'll forget to write it down.
I will remind you.
Avinu Malchenu, our Father and our King, we thank you and praise you that you have drawn us each to yourself, that you have been faithful to us in our individual lives. And Father, we want to learn more about you so that we can more accurately represent you, both in our own lives and in other people's lives. Please help us as we continue on this path. Please be with our friends and loved ones and relatives, and keep them safe, and keep them focused on you also. Thank you for everything that you do for us every day. B'Shem Yeshua, Meshachenu, in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen.
Amen. And so we say to you all, Shavua Tov, have a great week.
Hitraot,
We
which
say,
means get out of here.
and we say to you, Happy Hanukkah,
Happy Chanukah.
which starts tomorrow night.
Huh?
And then, because we won't see you before, we wish you all a
Happy
Merry
New-
Christmas. No, a Merry Christmas and then a Happy New Year.
All the same to you. And I
Thanks.
told Dr. Patrice, and I'll quickly tell you, I appreciate you guys so much. And you allowed me to enjoy Christmas again. We were not allowed to even mention the word in our congregation.
Not
And
uncommon.
I've had so much fun sharing all that you've taught me. Because even back in this Gentile Christian church, there's a lot of people going, oh, Christmas, blah, 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 blah. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, you need to go look up Hippolytus, and find those. And they're like, really? Well, how come we didn't know that? And I'm like, oh, well,
Because you gotta read books and learn things and,
yeah,
study.
and you guys are wonderful. And I just really appreciate the effort you put in educating us. I appreciate that more than I can express.
Thanks.
All right. We're still recording.